vaccine news. And here's what we know so far in terms of the rollout. As of the 14th of March, a total of 145,544 healthcare workers had been vaccinated under the Sisonke protocol. The first batch of 80,000 Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccines arrived in South Africa on the 16th of February. The second batch of 80,000 Johnson & Johnson vaccines arrived on the 27th of February, and the third consignment arrived on the 13th, just this past weekend. For more of an update on the vaccination process in South Africa, we're joined by Dr. Aslam Dasoo, who is convener of the Progressive Health Forum. Good to be with you once again, Dr. Dasoo. So when we're looking at the numbers here, we see 145,544 health workers have already been vaccinated as of the 14th of March. But how wide is the scope? How many healthcare workers actually need to go through this vaccination process?
Hi, good afternoon. Well, look, we have about 1.25 million health workers who are part of the initial cohort to be vaccinated. So we know that the J&J vaccine, which is being used right now, there's a total of 500,000 doses expected. And as you've indicated earlier, it's about 150,000 vaccinations have occurred. So we have a long way to go still. The problem right now, it's not a problem, but the fact of the matter is that we can't really increase the vaccination rate, given that this is a specific vaccination program being run as a trial, so it can only be done in trial sites. And we're averaging just under 7,000 a day. Now, obviously, this is a very low number and will take us a long time to vaccinate a sufficient portion of the population if we continue at this rate. So we expect that once this batch of 500,000 doses are used, that there will be further vaccine to complete the vaccination of the healthcare cohort, and then we can proceed to the next phase.
I mean, the numbers that you mentioned are huge, but what you also mentioned quite importantly is that we are still vaccinating under the Sisonke protocol. How far are we as South Africa in ensuring that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is actually 100% safe and usable and accredited in the country? How long is that process?
Well, it's under a phase 3B trial, which means that the phase 3 results initially have been registered with SAPRA, but for the vaccine to be fully registered and approved, there's still a bit of a way to go, and that is why they're conducting this vaccination rollout under that program. So it is a concern that we will only have completed this 500,000 at this rate, perhaps by the end of April. When we should have, we are told, more vaccine available. But it's not really a problem for the registration of the vaccine. The vaccine is very safe. It has been proved to be effective in the results that have been registered so far. Here and abroad, the FDA has approved the vaccine already, and I believe SAPRA will do so shortly as well. It has proved to be convenient in that it's a one-shot vaccine, and it is effective against the variant that we know is the predominant virus right now in this region.
Dr. Dasoo, you were one of those voices who were very critical about government's strategy regarding the procurement of the vaccine earlier on in the process. Talk to us about how the hiccups and the inconveniences that we've had thus far with the various vaccines, starting first with AstraZeneca, and then now we're still waiting, the delays with SAPRA, etc. How is that going to affect the vaccination process for the masses in South Africa and the rollout in earnest to begin?
Sure. I think this is a very important question. It's unfortunate that we have only been able to do what we have done so far. And it's now in the past, you know, that's water under the bridge. We should have started acquisition sooner and started the program earlier. But we are where we are, and we now have to look ahead. The AstraZeneca vaccine that was initially ordered and arrived, you know, had a fateful coincidence with the results, demonstrating that it doesn't have that great efficacy against the variant. And the government initially paused the rollout and was able to pivot to the J&J vaccine, which was fortunately available to us and was made, its arrival was expedited by the scientists conducting the trial there. And that is the one that we are currently in. But the AstraZeneca vaccine, 1 million doses of it are here. And there's been various, and it's unclear what the government is really going to do with it. The announcement that they would sell it on to the AU for use in African countries where the variant is not very effective is not a very practical solution. One is that because we have purchased the vaccine at about $5 a dose, and that African countries and through the AU are obtaining supplies through COVAX at about $1 a dose, makes it unlikely that they're going to purchase the vaccine from us. But again, the government will have to tell us where they are with that. In my view, and in the view of several of the scientists, and certainly the preponderance of scientific opinion in the WHO and further abroad, as well as here, is that the AstraZeneca vaccine, it is highly plausible that it will protect against severe illness. So it is very important to understand that right now, herd immunity is not the primary objective. Right now, the primary objective is to prevent serious illness in vulnerable people. And for that, the AstraZeneca vaccine is suitable and it should be used. So the prevarication is causing a little bit of consternation, and it's also making it likely that the vaccine may expire before it can be, properly employed. And this is not very helpful. I think the government has to come up much more clearly and tell us what it's intending to do with that consignment of vaccines, and perhaps to take the counsel of scientists here and abroad that they do roll it out to vulnerable groups, even under trial conditions. That we know it is 100% safe, and it's highly plausible that it will be effective.
I'd like you, Dr. Dasoo, to comment, if you will, on some reports that are coming out on issues regarding the safety of AstraZeneca in different parts of the world. We are hearing some adverse side effects that are emanating from usage of AstraZeneca. Could you illuminate that for us?
Sure. Well, first, it's important to say that it hasn't been proved that these clotting disorders that have been noted primarily in Norway are directly related to the vaccine. So there's no clear link between the two. I think countries, on an abundance of caution, are just suspending the rollout until that becomes absolutely clear, and you can be certain that that's underway right now. Also, it's important to understand the scale here. We're looking at about 30 adverse events out of 5 million doses given so far, and I beg your pardon, out of 30 million doses given so far, and it's really concerning that there is such a panic when adverse events emerge, but without proof that it's located to the vaccine. The headlines don't really speak to what is in the body of the reports, where all the authorities are saying it's just as a precautionary basis that we are pausing the rollout until we can be certain that the clotting events that we have noted are not related to the vaccine.
Dr. Dasoo, there's an area of concern. You mentioned an amount of $5 that was paid by South Africa, while the current rate for the AstraZeneca's vaccine, others are buying it for $1. What is the eventuality or the possibility of huge wastage here? First of all, already incurred, having paid $4 more for AstraZeneca than what others are comparatively spending or having paid, and also the fact that these vaccines expire in April, and there isn't yet a solid plan on how they're going to be utilized, if at all.
Yes, of course, this is a big concern right now. The wastage is going to be an issue if no one purchases these vaccines from us at the price we paid for it. So there will definitely be a loss then. And the $1 you mentioned, just a little bit more than $1, that's the price of the AstraZeneca vaccine through COVAX. And as you know, COVAX has started delivering vaccines throughout the continent, and AstraZeneca is part of that mix. So So it's going to be a problem of financial wastage if we don't recoup the money. Second, it's going to be a problem of wastage even if the vaccines don't get used and do expire. Now, I do need to say the April date for expiration is actually a review date by the manufacturers because, you know, these vaccines haven't even been around for a year for people to determine exactly when it denatures and becomes expired. So what happens is that by April, the manufacturers will be looking at the vaccine and determining whether spoilage is taking place or whether the expiry date can be extended. We expect that the expiry date can be extended by a couple more months, which makes the case stronger to consider utilizing the vaccine right now. It's in our hands, and that there's no other vaccine available. We have vulnerable groups, older people, old age homes, where there's nothing standing between them and the virus. Now, you know, the argument that, look, this thing is not as effective as it was against the original virus, you know, doesn't really hold, because it is effective, even if it's at a lower efficacy. And that lower efficacy is better than nothing. And so to prevent serious illness, we will be able to prevent significant amounts of hospital admissions if we do utilize it now. And I do hope that the Ministerial Advisory Committee is advising the government accordingly, because at this point, obtaining vaccine around the world is a very fraught affair, as you can imagine. It's a dog-eat-dog situation out there, and we need to box together here. The government is in negotiations with different manufacturers. It's very difficult. We have no indication of when any contract will be signed, how much for, and when the vaccines will land here. So they need to look at opening up acquisition space to legitimate. We do have a national program of rollout, so any vaccine brought in by other parties will have to follow that program. So there's no problems around equity, which is a concern for some, that if more parties than the government buys, you know, there'll be a problem with that. And lastly, let me say that we should also think more regionally. It's pointless to think of South Africa as an island. You know, we have 6 contiguous states. There should have been a strategy put in place for all of these together to both acquire vaccine together and to roll out the vaccine together. This would have been much more advantageous and create a regional degree of immunity that could have global impact as well. So we have to up the game now. It's not too late to do this, and I do hope that the authorities, you know, take this kind of counsel on board swiftly.
Dr. Aslam Dasoo, awesome chatting to you this afternoon, and thank you so much for that update.